Before we dive into today's episode, I want to take a moment to provide a trigger and content warning. On Smart Talks, we often discuss sensitive and potentially distressing topics, including sexual violence, trauma, and abuse. We understand that these conversations can be challenging and may bring up difficult emotions for some of our listeners. Our full content warning pertaining to today's episode can be found in the show notes. If at any point in time during this episode you feel overwhelmed, we encourage you to take care of yourself, whether that means pausing the episode, seeking support from a trusted person, or accessing resources. Your well-being is our priority. If you or someone you know needs help, you can visit elizabethsmartfoundation.org for a list of resources, or contact the National Sexual Assault Hotline at 1-800-656-HOPE. Thank you for joining us today. Now let's begin.
Today's guest is the incredibly talented Jana Kramer, a country singer, actress, podcast host, New York Times bestselling author, and mother of 3. You may know her as Alex from One Tree Hill or from her journey on Dancing with the Stars, but today we're going to delve a little bit deeper. Despite her talent, fame, and success, she's faced many challenges, and she's emerged with a story of perseverance and hope. Jana's story has threads of survival and strength, from overcoming abuse in previous relationships to creating a song called Warrior, inspired by the love and support of her husband, Alan Russell. Her most recent role in Lifetime's Gaslit by My Husband is deeply personal, as it echoes parts of her past experiences. We are so grateful she agreed to come on Smart Talks to share about her life, her passions, her family, and her insight into abuse, and finally, why she chose to share her story publicly. When we sat down with Jana, she was so warm, genuine, and open. Her interview was one of my absolute favorites to date, and I can't wait for you to hear from her.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Smart Talks. Today we are so excited to be here with Jana Kramer, and so excited, so grateful to have you be a part of today's episode. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for coming here and also doing my podcast as well. So thank you.
I was honored. We just like starting with like funny questions, and the one that just like has
breaking the ice, you know?
The one that just sticks in my brain is, do you prefer reading or writing?
Reading or writing? Gosh, it depends what it is. But if I had to pick, I would say writing.
Really?
Yeah.
I'm so impressed.
Really?
Yeah. I don't know. Like for me, I'm always like, oh, I just like, it's the end of the day, or I'm on an airplane, or I just want to like not escape my reality. Right. Like I'm not unhappy with my reality, but also I appreciate reading other people's work.
So I love reading, but I am very picky about which books I like to read. So like I love Emily Giffin. She's a dear friend too. I stalked her on Instagram. And so, and I was like, I'm obsessed with you. And so that was like after her first book. So I only really read her books, but I just started reading. I just finished the book. I can't remember the author's name, but The Light We Lost or something.
Oh, I have that book.
Fantastic book. I was bawling.
Like, on my bedside table, waiting to be read.
So it's so good. But my husband, he goes, whenever you read a book, you're gone for 4 days. So it's hard for me, and as a mom or two, it's just like, at the end of the night, I'm exhausted. But I do love to write, because I feel like I still have my journals from when I was in elementary school to middle to high. Like I always love to kind of read and then look back and see the trajectory of things.
Well, and you've written several books. You're a New York Times best-selling author. Yes, so I guess that makes sense that your answer is writing.
Yeah.
That tracks. Okay, sweet or sour candy?
Sweet. But more, I would say savory. Okay. Like, isn't like chocolate? I'm a chocolate girl.
Oh, I am too. Yeah.
Like a brownie and a cookie over
all day,
anything.
Every day. Yeah. Over anything else.
Over cake. Same. Or like sweet.
Yeah.
Like I wouldn't want sour. Only sour when I was pregnant.
Oh, I love sour.
You do?
Oh, I do.
No, so funny.
I don't know.
Those little lemon sour
sugar,
balls.
I like it.
I was obsessed with. Yeah.
And if you're going to go on vacation, would you rather go like
beach,
alpine, or tropical?
Beach, all the way. I love the sand. I love the water. My therapist always says, she's like, whenever I'm stressed or I'm going through something, she's like, go find water. So I'm always like, I have to go to the water, whether it's a stream or a lake, but I'm a big beach girl, and I just love watching a sunset. Yeah.
A warm beach or
I'm
a
the
cold
same.
beach?
What do you mean
Warm.
a cold beach?
Scotland.
Oh, sorry.
Scotland beaches are interesting. We definitely went to one, but I prefer a warm one.
Fair.
I love
fair.
Scotland. Like, I love it more than anything. Beautiful memories there, but I would prefer tropical.
Okay.
Don't blame you.
Yeah.
Puzzle or board game?
Puzzle. Nope. Board game.
Okay, what board game? If you
Oh
had
my
to choose.
gosh. I grew up playing so many games. We play Sorry all the time in our house. That's a big one in our house. My husband and I like playing code names. It's not really a board game, but I mean, literally anything. I'm so competitive. I love. We have a whole game cabinet downstairs, like Rummy Cube and Play 9, but I'm a card girl too. I love euchre. So
Euchre. That is so funny. Okay, my husband's family is from Ohio, and
Yeah,
I was like,
that
is
tracks.
this just an Ohio thing?
Michigan,
'Cause when I
Ohio,
first started-
Indiana. It's the Midwest.
Yeah.
That's like our game.
Listen, I've gotten good at euchre. We'll have to play sometime.
Yeah, I've taught all my girlfriends in Nashville how to play.
Fun. It's a great game.
Never even heard of
It's
it.
so good. It's very hard to teach people. Like my husband and I almost didn't make it when I tried to teach him how to play euchre, but
My husband's mom took pity on me, and she was like, "Okay, I'll
Yeah.
teach you how to go."
Yeah,
it's a good
good.
game. It's a good game. That's fun.
Okay.
Okay. Okay. Last thing. Not. Or do you have another?
Nope.
Okay, so the last thing I want you guys to do, I just think that this will be really funny. So Jordan and I often, like we came in and we started talking to you about, you guys have this great connection. You both have Scottish husbands, which is fun. And we made her do the accent, Matthew's accent. I would love for both of you to like give a Scottish phrase. Like I want to hear.
I'm
I
so
want to hear.
bad.
I think it's so fun. I want you to do
Okay,
that.
this is like what my husband always says. And again, I am like the worst at doing his accent. But he's like, honestly, Jana. Honestly, Jana. That's it. That's all I can do.
It's good.
Sounds good to me.
It doesn't sound Russian, by the way.
I can.
That's a good
If
one.
I have, if I add a third word, it goes Russian. So,
That's what it takes.
honestly, Jana.
Well, that's why I only said, that's great.
That's great.
It's just two.
Two words.
true.
That's the gap.
Oh, it's so funny.
Well, just I guess diving right in. Can you just talk to us a little bit about like your childhood and growing up and what your life was like?
So growing up, I'm from Michigan. I grew up in a household where, and it's so hard to talk about because where my relationship with my father is now is great. And so it's, you know, I never want him to like hear certain interviews. And I remember when I released my first book with him in it, I've so many times I was going back and being like, I don't want to hurt his feelings. I don't want, but this is also my truth.
Yeah.
And this is what went on in that household. And this is why I think led me down. I'm not blaming my father for the relationships I ended up with, but it also, I think, made me go, oh, this is what is the right thing. So growing up in my household was very, my dad was, you were made to be afraid of him. And he was very angry. He was very, I hate to use this word, but you know, back in the day when we're in the 80s, hitting kids was the norm, but how my dad would go about it was a little more over the top with just the hand swiping. It was more creative, like using a log or other things. And my brother got more of the brunt of it. But I think and through a lot of therapy, where I learned was my mom didn't do anything about it. And so to me, it was like, oh, that's acceptable then, that kind of behavior. And then my dad ended up cheating on my mom with his now ex-wife. But he left the house when I was 14. And yeah, my mom, single mom, my dad just kind of moved on with his new wife. And at that age, it was interesting. I just saw this the other day when I was talking about it. I was like, you know, my dad never even asked to like have any kind of custody split with us. But I don't know. like, why? You know, I'm like, well, why didn't we ever go to his house and where he was living? Like, why didn't he want us to go? Maybe he did. And maybe at that time I was like, I don't want to go to your house. And they didn't enforce it. I have no idea. Something I might ask my mom over the holidays. Hey, Mom, let's just so we can, like, I can understand this. Because anyways, but yeah, so parents got divorced. I had an older brother. He went away to college. And so it was just me and my mom. And then I hated my dad. I hated him for what he did to my mom. You know, my brother and I weren't close. And then for a long time, I tattled on him a lot when I was like the younger sister. And so then I blamed myself for his abuse that he might have had, because I was always like, Steven's doing this. So then I realized that I was carrying a lot of that too, from childhood. So it was just, my childhood was, and again, I don't want to say it was, I know people have had it worse than I did, for sure. I also know that some things back then were more acceptable. It was just an angry household, is basically what I would call it.
Before you just go on, I just want to say, because like I've spoken a lot, and I have had so many people come and disclose their stories to me, and I think it's just really important to just jump in and say, like, when I hear you say, oh, a lot of people have had it worse than me, like pain is pain,
Suffering is suffering. Yeah,
like,
I do the same thing too.
if that's your life, like, that's your life, and you're allowed to feel however you feel. And like, just, I mean, I'm sure you know it. I feel like maybe you said it earlier when we were chatting, but like, there's just no comparison, because there's no equal balance. There's no equal scale for all of us. None of us could, I mean, I grew up in a wonderful home, like a happy home, like a loving home. And this happened. And you're saying you grew up in like an angry home, and like you were hurt. Like, there's two completely different backgrounds. Like, there's just no comparing. So
Right.
I just wanted to say that.
We just want to validate you.
Yeah. So anybody listening, don't ever say, oh, it's nothing compared to you, because if you've experienced pain, then that's pain, and like, you shouldn't belittle it.
Well, I hear you, and I appreciate that. I think there's a piece of, because I went into then abusive relationships, the abuser's voice will always say, what I did to you wasn't that bad. So like, when I would go in, my therapist had taken me to a couple shelters to be with some other domestic violence victims. I walked out, and one of my first things I said, I was like, well, I didn't get stabbed 50 times. You know what I mean? I guess mine wasn't that bad then. Like, my ex was right. And she's like, no, she's like, that's your abuser that's trying to tell you that what he did wasn't that bad to you. So I think that piece is kind of, unfortunately, like, layered in me still.
Yeah, we have to unlearn those things that they brainwash us with and make us believe. Yeah.
But I guess during my captivity, I was like physically chained up for a period, but I also experienced like mental chains. And from having experienced both, with physical chains, like, you can see it, like, the bond is physical. You know that could be broken somehow. Mental chains, you cannot see them. You do not see the way to break them. Like, they are so much stronger. They're so much harder to break free. So I just want to put that out there. Sometimes I'm not saying it's easier, like, if it's physical, but on some level, you can see it. You can see, like, oh, the bone needs resetting, or I need stitches, or like, I need bolt cutters to cut through this chain.
Right.
Like, you can see a physical way to fix the problem. Whereas when you are like emotionally and mentally chained up, you can't see it.
Right.
Yeah.
And nobody else can see it, and nobody else has a clue what's going on. So that is a layer of complexity and difficulty that no one else would know about.
For sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
I agree.
That's a great point. The emotional and mental abuse is hidden so often. It's hard. Yeah. Great point. Okay. Back to your.
No, but I mean, that's pretty much my upbringing. Then I graduated high school, and I moved to New York, and then I moved to Los Angeles. I was like, I'm out of here.
So what led you to acting and film and music?
Oh, I loved it so much. I always, anytime my grandpa Martin, my dad's dad, who was just still, I mean, he's my angel. He unfortunately passed during the time of my parents' divorce, which was just like the most brutal timing of all of it. But he always had his little video VCR camera, and I was, always kind of the star of the show, and just like trying to, make videos. And I always knew I wanted to be an actress. And So when, you know, all my friends are taking their SATs and I'm just like, I'm moving to either
not
New
for
York
me.
or LA. Like I will not have a fallback plan. I'm not going to college. And my dad thought I was messing it my entire life. And I was like, I don't give a F what you say. I'm out. My mom's like, go live your dreams. So yeah. And
I
then
love that like confidence in you though. You were like, this is not for me. I know very clearly that this is my path.
Yeah.
That's pretty amazing at a young age to like know. And to you, it wasn't even a risky thing.
No, I was
Like,
like I just knew
to
I
leave
had
and
to
go.
do it. Or if I don't get out of Michigan, I'll just stay here. I'll probably marry my high school sweetheart, Matthew. And then I'll, you know, which would have been fine. But that's not what I wanted.
That's not what you wanted for your life.
I wanted to do more than just a local commercial. And, you know, so went to New York first, worked on a soap opera there, met some of the right people. And then they told me to go out to LA. So the next thing I knew, I was, you know, living out in LA for 10, 12 years.
It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
That is incredible. Talk to me about, like, if you feel comfortable, like how you met.
My first abuser.
Yes.
Yeah. I met him at the Coffee Bean on Fairfax and Sunset. And I'll just say too, and this is gonna make me sound bad, but like I grew up where, you know, my mom, you know, she worked 3 jobs. We didn't have a lot of money. Like the most, like we'd have, our dinners would be pancakes and, you know, she'd make a grilled zucchini and that would just be the meal we would have. Or it's like, she didn't have a lot of money. My dad, again, I don't know where he was at. But because of that, like, and I was, you know, in Los Angeles and I was working and I saw this guy rolls in with this Porsche and I'm just like, oh, wow. Like, and he, you know, he was very, fancy and he had some swag and he was kind and he was sweet and he took a liking to me and I was like, you like me, like this guy who's got a Porsche, and like, oh my gosh. And then he took like me and my girlfriend shopping, which now that I think back, I'm like, man, he was just like trying to
Grooming you.
Yeah. And he was older. I don't even know how many years older at this point. Because I think it was like, because he kept lying about his age. So that was another thing. I actually don't even know what his real last name is. He had told me his name was Michael Gambino, which that should have been a red flag. But he was, I think, 16 years older, somewhere between 16 to 18 years older than me. And yeah, 2 weeks later, we went to Vegas because he was like, wouldn't it be so fun if we got married? And I'm like, yeah, that'd be amazing. That sounds great. So we went to Vegas and had Elvis marry us. And then soon after was when all the the abuse started happening, where first when I got back from Vegas, I was like, oh my gosh, like obviously that was a joke. Let's annul that. And he got really angry. And that was the first time I was scared of him. And then I'm like, oh my God, what did I do? And he disappeared, like literally disappeared. And I'm like, I can't tell anyone that I just married this random dude, you know? And I booked a movie in Romania and he eventually called me when I was in Romania and he was like, I'm sorry, my dad died, which his dad didn't die. His dad was very much alive. But I didn't know that. And so I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. And so I was like, listen, let's just forget I said anything about the annulment. Let's just like date and let's just forget about the wedding stuff. And I really just wanted to focus on my first movie that I just booked. I was so excited. And then I got really sick in Romania. They had to take out my appendix. But it wasn't actually my appendix. They took out the wrong organ. It was like a whole thing. It was insane. So he ends up flying to Romania to help take care of me. And I'm like, you know what? Like, this is really sweet. You know, like he's taking care of me. And he's like, I'd like to stay here while you finish filming if you wouldn't, you know, mind. And I'm like, no, please. Like, that would be great. But at that point I had to like fly home to have another surgery. And then when I flew back, he came with me. And that's when he was like, yeah, I want to stay with you. So, but that is when a lot of the abuse started happening too, where he was like calling me fat. And that was like the verbal stuff. And then Romania was the first time that he pushed me into a wall and was like, you know, you're nothing, you're just fat and like you suck and like all the things.
While you're recovering too, like from all this.
Yeah. And then I just was one of those things where I really wanted him to love me, because I think for so many years I wanted my dad's love, and having that father figure approval and love and acceptance and being told I'm enough. So when he would make me feel like the most beautiful, successful person, and then the next day he'd come in and he would, slap the shit out of me, choke me, throw me downstairs. I mean, the whole thing. He kicked me out of our apartment that we were living in. I had to sleep in the car. He would choke me all the time. And then the next day, like, he'd be so nice.
Yeah,
and then I would
to
be
make
like,
up
I
for
would
it.
just like be so happy, but I didn't know how to get out. I mean, he would threaten my career. And at that time, my career had just started, so I'm like, okay. And he says he was a DJ for Eminem. So I'm like, and he has all these other ties. And I'm like, all right, well, he really probably could ruin my career, which he never was. Eminem did not know him. Like, all these things was not true. I wasn't allowed to question anything. Like, I didn't know what he was doing. And I mean, there was things like that. He'd come home. There was like this club he was working at, and I just heard him, like, I just remember hearing counting money. But again, if I asked anything, I would be hit, choked, whatever. And again, I just didn't know how to get out. Everyone loved him. He was really kind to everybody. And he was my husband.
Yeah.
Like, how could I tell anybody what was going on? And then I lost all my friends. He alienated me from absolutely everybody. I lost my agents and my managers because I couldn't show up to auditions. And I got to a point where I prayed to my grandpa, who was my, dad's dad. And I was just like, honestly, like, I don't want to be here anymore. Like, he keeps threatening to kill me. So if you could just like make it so bad that I have to leave, like, that I have no choice. Because every time, like 2 weeks prior to the main incident, he said he was going to kill me. I ran down to the neighbor's house on Winnetka, called the cops. I went to my one girlfriend's house that I knew.
And you're
where
back
she lived.
in LA.
This is in
just
LA.
To be clear.
Yeah. And, that night he sends me a video or a picture of our dogs on the, I think it was 405 or 101 freeway. He's like, I'll let them go if you don't come home.
Oh my gosh.
So of course I come home. It's all my fault. What do? I end up sleeping with him that night, because of course it was always somehow my fault. And so that was the 2 weeks prior. So that the next 2 weeks, that's when I was like, I prayed to my grandpa, and I'm like, I'll just make it so bad. And I'm like, and if I have to go, I have to go. Like, I'm at the point now where I just want to get out of this. Like, I'm so miserable with my own life. And, he, on typical, he'd come back from a club, from DJing or whatever he was doing. He would grab me and then throw me out of bed and just start beating me up, whether he was drunk or on pills. I don't know what he was doing. And same thing, he grabbed me out. And this time I had just booked, because my girlfriend was working on a movie in Laguna, and she's like, hey, there's a part. Do you want to do it? And I'm like, yeah, love that. So, I was driving back and forth because I wasn't allowed to stay in Laguna because of course he had to have eyes on me, like, anywhere that I went. So I was, at this point, it was before MapQuest, or no, it was before, like, the Google map area. So I had to print out all the things.
When we used to drive and have printed directions we were following as driving. Yeah.
So I had gotten lost, and I called one of the ADs or something from the set, and he had saw that in my phone that I called a guy. And so he was just livid with me, threw me out of bed, started going after me. And he's like, that's it. Now I'm going to get my gun and I'm going to kill you. And so because he had already threatened, I was like, no, gosh, now he has a gun. And my girlfriend, who again had no idea anything was going on. She was in the guest house, and I just screamed. I said, I'm leaving. I grabbed the keys, and I see him he put a rock in front of the gate door, and he had his hand behind his back. And I was like, oh my God, this is it. Like, he's going to shoot me. Like, he's got his gun. And then he just threw me onto the ground and started choking me. He had his hand, and then I noticed that it wasn't actually a gun. It was just his hand. And then I just remember screaming and calling out whenever I had a chance to call out, and I was trying to, like, gouge his eyes and do anything I could to get up. And then I just kept, anytime I had a breath, I'd be like, my mom. And then I kind of saw the whole thing. Like I saw my funeral. I saw like my mom crying. I just kind of watched my whole life like flash. And then the next thing I know, so I had passed out from him choking. And the next thing I know, the police, because my girlfriend had heard the screams. And so she called the cops and they came and
wow, thank goodness for your friend.
I know. And he left. Well, he was already gone.
He left before the cops came.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And then yeah, he was gone. I don't know where he went. I went to, again, another friend where I knew where they lived. He was my old manager, and I showed up and I was all like black and blue. And, I was like, I don't have any money, because he has all the money,
Control over all of it.
So I was like, I want to go home and I don't know how to get home. So he bought me and my girlfriend a ticket back home. And then, yeah, I told my mom, I was like, I'm done. Like, I'm staying in Michigan. I'm staying put. And she was like, you were not. And so then I told her some of it. I didn't tell her everything. I didn't tell her I married him yet. And she's like, you're not going to let a man do this to you. She's like, I'll come back. We'll, get your place. I emailed the people we were renting, and I was like, this is kind of what happened. And can I please not be at fault to pay for the rest of this, like rent and whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know where he's at. So long story short, we ended up, he tried to commit suicide. And when the cops came, his brother, I think it was his brother who found him, there was a warrant out for his arrest for premeditated attempted murder, since he had tried to a few weeks before. They got him on that. So yeah, and then he went to jail.
Thank goodness.
Mm-hmm.
Thank goodness.
Wow.
Where do you feel like, because you, like, having met you and like spoken with you for a bit, and then like listening to you talk about like your childhood, and like, I mean, you showed confidence and bravery, like leaving your home in Michigan, going to New York, just then packing up and going to Los Angeles, and then to keep on like surviving and like keep going, and like even still pursuing your career when this monster is beating the crap out of you. Like, where do you feel like your confidence and strength came from?
Or did you have to rebuild it after going through this entire experience?
I think on the front end, it was one of those things where I knew I had to get out of it. I didn't know how. And I was embarrassed too. So there was a piece of me that almost didn't want anyone to know, because I'm like, how could I allow this to happen? And how am I here? That was a lot of times. I'm like, I wrote about this in my book, the next chapter, where I was like, how am I hiding in the bushes from a man? Like, literally, how is this happening right now? Like, why did I ever let him make me think X, Y, and Z? And, I mean, I know now through all like my therapy work and stuff, just the childhood and my beliefs about myself and what I thought, but there's still that piece in me where even post all of it, where it's like, and he was, where I would still just like, even though I knew he was locked up, I would still be like, he's going to be outside my door. Like, somehow this man's going to find a way to like actually finish the job. And I don't know. I think it's the grit in me that's like, I'm not gonna back down, because I don't have any other options. That's the thing. I don't have I've never had anything handed to me. So I've always just had to like, just figure it out.
So how long in total with your abuser? And then can you talk a little bit about him going to jail and that experience?
I was with him for like about a year. And then the trial happened really soon. It was pretty fast. And then they were actually trying to third strike him. I didn't know any of this, but he was in jail previously for money laundering. He was in jail for domestic abuse on his first wife. Like, I didn't know any of it. He had a whole big rap sheet of all the stuff. I mean, so much stuff. And that is when we did court, it was like, Mom, I'm going to have to say he's my husband. And she was like, what? And I'm like, I'm so sorry. I didn't know how to tell you, and that's where, that's where I tell my daughter now, I'm like, you can tell me anything.
Yeah.
And like, I will be there. And I knew she would, but it was just more like my own guilt and my own embarrassment with it. But, yeah, so through that, and then he got sentenced, I think it was not 10 years, and he got out in
6, is that what I read?
something 6. Yeah. It's all very blurry.
Do you feel like in that instance, do you feel like justice was served? I know that's a hard question. Sorry. Do you know why I ask that, Elizabeth? They ask you that every interview that we have. And I just think it's so interesting. We talk about justice all the time. It means different things to different people. And so I think it's just fascinating to hear other people's perspectives.
And I mean, just literally last night, Heather and I were chatting about justice, and we were like dissecting it further and further. And I finally just got to the point where I was like, no, like, I'm not sure that there is such a thing as justice, because, you know, if someone is killed, the person who did the killing, like, justice does not bring that person back to life. There's no resurrecting them. Like, for my kidnapping, like, those 9 months of my life that were stolen, my childhood that was stolen, the way, like, I was abused and raped, like, my innocence will never be restored to me.
Yeah.
Like, those experiences will never be taken away. You could never...
It's almost like
make
you can't
up
put
for
years
it.
on it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But it's interesting because I've never been asked that. And I'm like, that's what just made me why I have thought harder on that. Because I'm like, to your point, I'm like, I'm glad he got some time, because there's a lot of people that don't, you know? But, you know, I'm sad for his kids that are out there, you know, that didn't get to have a relationship with this man. And for a while, it was really messed up. I like blame myself that he was in prison. I'm like, well, if he didn't meet me, he wouldn't have been in prison. But he ended up committing suicide post
That's what I thought.
prison. And so, and to that, I still am sad for his children that have not gotten the chance to, you know, I still think I can have empathy for that piece of it, even though he was a monster to me.
I think that's amazing that you can have empathy for this person's family after everything that
They did nothing wrong to me.
Yeah.
You know, and I didn't even know them. I didn't even know he had 6 kids or however many he had.
Oh, he had 6?
I haven't, maybe 5.
Oh, so
6.
but he had a lot of kids.
He did. I had no clue.
Oh my gosh.
Did you find this out during the trial?
I
Or,
found
like,
this
how did you
out
find this out?
post. I knew he had one. And then one of his daughters had reached out to me. And for a while we were in communication, but I had to kind of cut communication just because it was unhealthy for me
For
to.
your own,
So
your
I
own
was like, I'm
healing.
sorry. Like, I told you everything that I could, and I don't want to continue to discuss or have that like connection to him through you.
Yeah.
So
I actually think that's really, really admirable, because I feel like it is hard to set boundaries, and it's hard to, like, when someone's asking something from you, like I think naturally you're like, I want to help you.
Yeah.
Or, like, I want to give you an answer, even if, like, it's at detriment to myself. So I just want to, like, applaud you for being able to be like, I've given everything I have. Like, there's nothing left. And, like, I just, for my well-being.
Yeah.
Like, I can't do this
yeah.
anymore.
And I feel bad that because I know she's tried a few times more to reach out, but I can't.
Yeah. Putting that positive boundary in place for your well-being.
Yeah.
It's hard, but important.
Yeah.
So you write a little bit about this in your book, My Next Chapter. And you've been outspoken about this. And I would call you an advocate for this issue, because you're very open and honest. And last month was Domestic Violence Awareness Month. And on your podcast, you spoke with a few survivors. You talked about your experience. What made you want to talk about that publicly? And how long did it take you? And what was really that, like, what was that thing that kind of triggered you to say, this is really important that people understand?
When I did Dancing with the Stars, it was, that was when I was like, you know what, I feel like this happened for a reason. I have a platform now to be able to help someone that might need help. And so that's when I was like, I think this is the time to share it. But I will say, even from then, I don't talk about it as much as I talk about other things, because there's just a piece where it still carries a bit of shame, and just it's the hardest of the things that I've gone through to talk about.
Well, I think it's incredibly brave of you to talk about it, and because I mean it is opening yourself up to vulnerability, and not everybody understands. And especially someone who hasn't experienced domestic violence or knows someone who's experienced domestic violence, it's a concept that just almost can boggle some people's minds. Like, you had a car, like, why don't you just drive away? Why would you drive back? Or if you're down in Laguna, like, why don't you just stay there? Like, it's hard for them to understand. But I think it goes back once again to like the physical chains versus mental chains. Like, it's not straightforward, and it's not hard. And I think it's so powerful to have someone sharing their story and being vulnerable, because I think it is shocking actually how many other victims there are in this world. I mean, it is like, for me coming back, you know, I didn't hear people talking about sexual abuse. I didn't hear people openly discussing like kidnapping or violence. Like, those were just topics that people didn't talk about. And so then it made me feel alone. Right. It made me feel like, well, what's the point of me talking about it? Because nobody else could possibly understand what I went through. So I don't want to talk about it. And I ended up not really talking about it for a very, very long time, just because I felt like I was so alone. But then as I have entered like this world of advocacy more and more, I am shocked at how rampant it truly is. And like the crossover between domestic violence and just sexual violence, and what like survivors of both experience, there's a lot of common ground.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, absolutely. And I think the more I do talk about it, it helps. And I do see the messages, and, you know, knowing that it helps other people is why I'll continue to. But I think, you know, there's other abusive relationships that I've been in post that were worse, that I can't publicly share and talk about. And those are the hard ones, because those are the ones that I think actually affected me worse than the first. But I can talk through the first one and know the experiences from the others to know how to, it's still the same feeling.
So I guess that brings me to, honestly, like kind of like the happier side of things. So you have experienced like terrible relationships, and now you're happily married, and he's lovely.
He's gonna be great.
He's wonderful. For you, what have been like the green flags instead of the red flags of your relationship?
Oh, I love that. That's such a good question, Elizabeth.
Yeah, I mean, they were hard to trust at first, because I'm so not used to a man that actually wouldn't put his hands on me. Like, I would get in guys' faces because I knew I would get hit. Like, I'm like, prove it to me. Yep, see, there you did. I knew you would. Like, I knew you would get in my face, and that you would hit me or push me or put your hands on me or bruise my arms or whatever it is. And with Alan, like, I don't even have to feel like I have to try that on him or push that on, because I know that he has so much respect and love for me, that man, and he was raised so well, that man would never even attempt, try, or, you know, one of my past ex would initiate wanting to hit me, you know? And it's like that threat of, I'm going to hit you. And he just would never do that, because the respect that man has is like the biggest green flag ever. Like, he's so, like, he just loves me so deeply, and he just respects me so much, and he respects my past too. So he knows, you know, like, he's Scottish, right? So he's got that, like, when he gets angry, and it's not even angry at me, it's just like they have a louder demeanor, they're harsher, that triggers me. And it's a conversation where I'm like, hey, like, can we just take the Scotsman out a little bit, you know, when we have a conversation, or if you're in a conversation with someone, because I get a little freaked out. And he's just like, absolutely. As opposed to being like, not understanding it. He doesn't understand that piece of it where I come from, but at least he leans into it.
So with that, this is a conversation we're always talking about it, the three of us together. Having a supportive partner now in Alan.
Yep.
What are things that you think a spouse or a partner can do to support someone who has lived through that kind of experience? Because I think what you've just described is like, he would never even come close to that. He wouldn't even have the threat. Like, he has too much respect. But what is something that they can actively do to support someone who has the lived experience?
I mean, I think he lets me, he holds so much space for me wanting to share my story too, you know, and he advocates for me, like, he's proud of me for sharing. Anytime I've ever shared or I post something on Instagram or, you know, say something, like he'll write like a little sticky note or he'll put a little, like he'll be like, I'm really proud of you. Like, so it's because he knows the inside workings of what it might have brought up for me. So I think just to have that support.
That's really sweet.
I get asked a lot, like, oh, like when you met your husband, did you like sit down and have a tell all with your husband? Or like, did he know about things? Or did you have to warn him about things? Or like talk to me about your relationship. I get asked those kind of questions.
I'm glad we didn't ask that.
I'd say quite frequently.
Yeah.
But I guess I'm like curious with you. Like you talked about like just, yes, when the Scots get angry, they do get a little bit louder and being like that. I need space from that. But I also wonder, like, were there other things like before a situation even arose that you just were like, hey, like, I just want you to know, like, this won't work for me, or like, I need this?
I feel like we're pretty aligned when well, I'll say one thing, like I was always, because I've had multiple marriages and a lot of stories out there about my past, I carry shame going into first dates, or they're just going to judge me on it instead of wanting to know the story of it. And so with Alan, even on our first date, I'm like, so do you want to know why I've had these many marriages or what? He's like, no. He's like, you can share, like, for sure. He's like, but I don't, like, I care about the woman sitting at the table right now. And I was like, okay, you win, you know, like that was like, that made me feel so just like seen. And so I think when we started talking about kind of non-negotiables and things and boundaries, we have a very agreeable, you know, place where we're like, this is what's right and this is what's wrong. And, you know, if you were to ever do this, like, this is not a, like, I cannot stand for that. I can't stand for this. And so, and we were very aligned on all of it. So
That's incredible.
yeah.
That is really cool. Okay, you did a recent film called Gaslit by My Husband with Lifetime.
Yep.
And I've heard you talk a little bit about that maybe kind of paralleling some of your experiences, but I'm really curious, like, what was that like for you? Was that a triggering experience or was it freeing or was it just a mixed bag?
It was really tough. So I actually went to Lifetime last year and I said, hey, you know, y'all know my background. I really want to do a true story. You know, obviously we've got my story, but you know, there's got to be someone else's story that we can, you know, go find. And so, you know, we found Morgan's story and I was like, yep, that's it. Let's write it. You know, let's do this one. And so, and then we hired, when it comes to movies like that, I'm like, I need to feel really comfortable with who's going to play the abuser.
Yeah.
I need to know them. I need to feel safe with them. And Austin Nichols was my favorite scene partner that I've ever worked with. In One Tree Hill, he was just like the best. And I'm like, I need Austin to take this role. Like this is his.
Yeah.
So he did. And knowing that he took it, there was like this sense of like relief. Right. And then I was like, all right, now I need my team there. Like I need my hair and makeup girl that I always use and love. I'm like, I just needed it to be like a really safe place. Cause I'm like, I'm going to go to a place that's going to be dark and triggering, or maybe, I don't know. Like I was sitting with my therapist. I'm like, maybe I'll have no emotions around it. Like maybe I'm not going to be able to do it. And I'm just going to be like, guys, I've done too much therapy now that I can't like feel the feelings and like, I can't cry or I'm not like scared or cause I'm like, no, you know? And so I was really nervous going into it. Cause I'm like, what if I just can't? And what if I don't want to?
Yeah.
Maybe I don't want to go back to that feeling of feeling trapped. And cause I have massive, like I can't even do an MRI without freaking out because someone on top of me, for example, like, and that is one conversation I had to have with my husband, like even sexually, like, I'm like, if you are laying on top of me and I can't breathe, I will freaking have a panic attack and throw you off of me. And you're going to be like, what just happened? This is why. He was on top of me and was trying to kill me and I couldn't breathe. And so it was like any time I feel trapped or someone's on top of me, like, I'm like, it's a no-no. So he knows, like, we have different positions of sex. Yeah. I'm like, I just can't even have like anyone laying on top of me.
Yeah.
So, but one of the scenes was Austin on top of me, you know, and it was the attack scene. And I mean, in the practice, I was like, let's just walk through the steps of it all. Like, let's just kind of feel it out, and then let's on action. I'm like, I can only do this like once or twice probably.
Yeah.
So, and usually there's like a million different angles and a million different takes, but I'm like, get all the cameras you need. Cause I'm like, we're only going once
You're
or
like,
twice.
this is a one and done situation, and we're out.
Woof. So, yeah. And then we did it, and it was like, and again, I could not breathe. And he put the pillowcase over my head, and I like suffocated into like the pillow. So then I actually like couldn't breathe. And I let out this scream, and Austin's like, I mean, it scared the living daylights out of him. And I broke out, and I just started like bawling. And then I felt embarrassed because I'm like, these crew guys were like, what is her deal? Probably. But I was like, and then I ran outside, and I just had to like put my feet on the ground and be like, this isn't real. This is like, I'm safe. Like, it was like the most wildest feeling, because I didn't know like that I would actually get like super, super triggered like that. But it was cool because I got to take my power back through, like, there was like this weird healing through the movie, because I never got to say anything to my abuser in court. And there was the scene at the end of the movie where I got to say something to my abuser.
It's so good.
It was a one take. And it was like, and I went back to my trailer and I just cried my eyes out, because it was everything I wanted to say to my abuser that I never got to say. And it was like, it was so healing. And it was like, yeah, it was like, I got to, not many women can go back into a story like that and take their power back. And I got to, and it was so cathartic, and it was a beautiful experience. Hard, but beautiful.
It's really amazing.
Thanks.
I can't imagine anyone doing it better, but someone that had that lived experience to bring that to life.
Yeah, it was.
So that's pretty powerful.
I have to ask, did Austin in that moment know that you were not
He knew
acting
my story.
anymore?
Yeah,
He knew it was real.
He knew my story because there was a few scenes in One Tree Hill where I went back to the trailer and just started crying. He's like, "Are you okay?" And I was like, and I told him what had happened, and he was like, "Well, this makes so much sense now." So he already knew like why, and he was so. I mean, he was just like, "I'm here for you. We love you." Like, it was just like, he was so supportive. I just adore him.
That's so great.
Yeah, that's amazing. So what's next for you?
So I've got 2 movies lined up for next year that I'm really excited about. One is a very faith-based, beautiful script. And it's kind of sad because I'm now playing the mom roles, and I was like, no, like I've aged into mom for one, but it's fine. Like I'm here for it. I love it. I'm gonna embrace it. And then there's another one that's really fun and sexy and like thriller. So I've got back to back in the beginning of next year. So right now I'm just like, just chilling for the holiday season with the family. And then I'm working on another book for next year.
Oh, wow.
It's exciting.
So
Oh my gosh, you are so busy.
podcast.
Well, you also just had a song come out, Warrior.
Oh,
and
yeah.
that is one of the last things I want to talk about, because I've read and like seen a little bit behind, but can you tell everyone the story behind the song Warrior?
He's so sweet. He again, because he knows like my shame in some of the areas, and he always is like, one of the things he says to me, he's like, "You're a warrior." And so he always calls me his little warrior. And so he even like has his like tattooed on his arm. And that's always just kind of been his message. Like when I was pregnant and we were like, I almost miscarried Roman because he had like a 50-50 chance, because I had like a hemorrhage and a fire. And there's all these things. He's like, "You're a warrior. You got this." So he's always very positive. And I'm like, man, I want to write him a song called Warrior, and that I'll always be his warrior, that I'm always going to fight for us and fight for our marriage. And so, yeah.
It's really
love
beautiful.
that.
The song is beautiful. The meaning behind it, the story.
My best friend, Sarah Bryce, who's Lee Bryce's wife, Lee's an amazing artist. And so he produced it. Sarah wrote it with me. So
That is really neat.
thanks.
It's very cool.
What a special gift.
I know.
Jeez.
Well, I'm actually really shy when it comes to being in settings. So people are like, "Did you sing at the wedding?" I'm like, no, I would crawl into a hole if I had to sing in like at like a small intimate level like that. So I just the morning of the wedding, we sat on a swing and I played it for him. So
Oh, that's amazing.
So beautiful.
in
I
Scotland.
love that.
Yeah, in Scotland.
In Scotland on a little tree swing. It was, yeah.
Well, if that's not magical, I don't know
know.
what is.
He's great.
We want to thank Jana for being willing to have such an open and honest conversation with us. Make sure to listen to her new song, Warrior, on Apple Music, Spotify, or wherever you listen, and check out her book, The Next Chapter. Jana also recently had Elizabeth on her podcast, Wind Down, so give that a listen. We hope you all enjoyed the episode. Bye for now.